what we do is, basically you go in one by one. So you buy a ticket and you go to the waiting room. The performance starts by waiting, basically. It really depends on the volition of the person at the cash register, whether you wait 5 minutes or half an hour. It's not very much decided. But you go in, you get a ticket, and then you wait. And after waiting for around half an hour, you go inside and you go through it on your own. So we let in visitors one by one with a delay of around, let's say, 5 minutes per visitor, because I really want you to have the feeling to be completely on your own in this cruddy, dusty, abandoned museum about something called the EU, which nobody cares about anymore, apart from the creators of the museum, who suffer a structural lack of funding. So that's a bit the idea. So the idea of solitude is very much at the basis of your visit. There's no natural daylight. We close off and hide all of the windows in the building and build fake walls. And we always try to have a labyrinthic setup so that you lose any kind of sense of orientation after a few minutes. And then, basically, what was really funny was, so I opened my museum about the collapse of the real museum a few years before the real museum opened. But I went to visit it a few months ago. And what was really striking to me was that a lot of things that I had written in as parody were actually literally represented in the official version, which really makes me doubt as well on how I have to deal with the notion of parody if the visitors do not perceive it as parody. So I have to think about this when I rework the work. But parody is very much at the core of the project, in the sense that, to me, it's not just a museum about the EU, it's also a museum about state museums. It's a museum about how the West watches, represents, and exhibits. Sorry, whoa. This is going to collapse soon. I'm just going to skip. Oh yeah, this is my display case with children's propaganda. A lot of this stuff, this is also something we play with. The thing is, within this speculative documentary, you blur very much the lines between fact and fiction. As generally Europeans are very much not informed about their own history, they very quickly start doubting the reality of what they're seeing. Basically, most of the objects that I exhibit are completely real. But for example, this is this game you see on the right-hand side. It's called Eurocracy. It's a Monopoly game that is used, or a Monopoly kind of game that is used in schools to inform children about the EU. And basically the way it works is, so you become a representative of a specific faction in the European Parliament. It can be the Eurosceptics, it can be the Liberals, it can be whatever. And then by throwing the dice, you have to travel around Europe in order to win over countries during the European elections. And the person who convinces the most countries becomes the European president and gives a speech at the end. Apparently the creator of the game, who sold it to me, he says it's a huge success in schools. I think it's because the game actually functions much more democratically than the European Union itself, because we're still not even at a point where you can elect a European president, for instance. But anyway, I was talking about parody. Yeah, this is the entrance, so that's where you buy your ticket, and then you go. These are generally the kind of corridors that you walk through on your own. Often we have people returning as well to the cash register, asking, did I go the right way? Because I ended up in this huge corridor and it's kind of nasty and vast. And then we have to send people back, and then they end up in the storage room, basically, of the exhibition. So then they go back again, and then we send them back inside. So there's this constant negotiation as well about this bit. We work a lot on, as I said, parody, for example. you have this very much pedagogical approach of the kind of museums I was forced to visit as a child, with, you know, these cut-out infographs. This is my dictator map, for example, about the long history of liberal democracy in Europe. We have parodies of colonial museum setups. For example, this is my collection of lobbyists' business cards, because Brussels, after Washington, is the second greatest lobbying capital in the world. So I started collecting business cards. If you want later on, I can tell you how I collected them, but I'm afraid I don't have the time right now. The display cases, I actually bought them from the Colonial Museum in Brussels, because they were redecorating or restructuring the museum. They're opening very soon, I think. Hopefully with an exhibition that shows how the West used to make colonial setups, and hopefully reflecting on our colonial past. So I bought these display cases. They used to contain butterflies, colonial butterflies, and then I replaced them with the cards. They have a horrible smell. They really smell of mothballs. Smell is also something I work on a lot in this exhibition. Everything smells kind of moist, damp, dusty, mothballs, etc. We also have parodies of, let's say, natural history setups. This, for example, is a diorama. I don't know how you say it in French. Diorama? No, I have no idea. Pardon? Diorama, même chose, merci. So this is a parody of like classical natural history diorama, where usually you see a zebra in its natural surroundings with a painted backdrop. In here, the diorama is a reproduction of the headquarters or the situation room of Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard. And basically we painted a backdrop and then have like a setup of Frontex in the middle of the diorama. We also have parodies of war museum setups, as you can see over here. For example, on the left-hand side, that's the flag of Golden Dawn, the Greek Democratic Neo-Fascist Party. As you see, they somehow copy a design that we have seen before, with the red, the white, and the black. The weird thing is, a lot of people are not, even in Greece, start hesitating whether this is actually a Nazi flag because we age everything, or whether it's a Golden Dawn flag. And we have, for example, also a Daesh display case, which is a copy of classical World War II setups. We also work, this we do a lot as well. On the one hand, you have parody. On the other hand, we have what I call dysfunctionalization, which is basically pictures missing. So there's a lot of stuff that is not even there in the museum anymore. This, for example, is a setup about border management. There's a few pictures missing, and then we have a notice in Esperanto saying, sadly enough, these pictures have been lent out to the Lampedusa Memorial for an exhibition on the history of manhunting. But it's in Esperanto, so most people can't read it, so they wonder where the pictures have gone. Yeah, this is another type of parody. For example, this is the one-to-one reconstruction of a hut that I visited in Almeria in the south of Spain, which is basically the fruit and vegetable garden of Europe. That's how it's known. It's an area that used to be the only semi-desert in Europe and has been transformed into the biggest agricultural, industrial agricultural production center of Europe, where thousands of illegalized migrant laborers live in self-constructed shacks on private property, which they often even pay rent for. I will tell you later on, if I have a few more minutes, about another project that I'm working on together with somebody else about this. But so we have this typical, museum one-to-one reconstruction of a place of dwelling and suffering, etc. Let's see if am I going to jump to this one? No, this comes later on. Yeah, that's my. I asked the European Parliament for a copy of the Acquis Communautaire, but they told me it was, they sent me a nice email back saying, sadly enough, thank you very much for your interest in Europe, European democracy, but sadly enough, we no longer print it out because it's now 350,000 pages long. So I had to do it myself. This is the waiting room, by the way, so that's where you wait. Speaking of dysfunctionalization, these are the audio guides. We have audio guides, but they don't function. They're glued to the table. They have a note saying, sadly enough, due to a technical error, the audio guides are out of order. We apologize for the inconvenience. But as it's in Esperanto, a lot of people don't read it. This is the storage space, which you also go through. I'm skipping. We also use a lot of one of the globalized economy's main products, plastic, in order to protect things, but also obscure things. So often you have to wade through layers of plastic in order to be able to read something. Or to, let's see where I am. Here I'm getting to the end.